few months ago, Matt Easton did a video on knife defense, which, for me, was a regressive trigger. I couldn't watch the whole video in one go, and I struggled to figure out whether I wanted to make this video or not. But given the topics we cover on this channel, I think it's important to get serious from time to time. So today, I want to talk about the reality of knife attacks. We're not going to be talking about knife fighting in martial arts or historical defences or sparring. In fact, although I may refer to it as a knife fight, I want to call it exactly what it is and make a point of it specifically, which is a life or death situation. Make no mistake, highly trained practitioners have died in knife fights. People with decades of training under their belt have had their life ended because of a little thing like that. Knives are just too erratic, too accessible, and too deadly. And in reality, it's not just knives, it's screwdrivers, it's scissors, it's anything that can cut, is easily accessible, and might be used against you. The chances of this happening can be mitigated by avoiding unstable people, avoiding bad neighborhoods, but there's not always the option to avoid those situations. You may have to go to those places or interact with those people in your day-to-day lives. So what do you need to know? Usually there are two types of knife attacks: threats and ambush. Now, threats are just as dangerous as an ambush, albeit you have a little bit more time. Threats usually involve larger knives because the person wielding it wants you to see it, wants you to be scared. And honestly, being scared of something like this is completely understandable. I've got decades of training under my belt. I'm still scared when somebody does something like this to me. People who use this will want something. They may want money, they may want power. If at all possible, just give it to them and get the hell out of there. But there will be some situations where you have no choice but to fight. You might get rushed, you might get ambushed with a smaller knife, one designed to be hidden, or you might have to protect your loved ones, your friends, and your family. There's a lot of talk on this topic, and not just on YouTube. Some of it good, some of it bad, and some of it just confusing. But to me, there's only 3 rules to knife fighting, and this is not the be-all and end-all of knife fighting. It's just what's helped me so far, and hopefully thinking like this may help to save your life if it ever comes down to it. Rule 1 is don't get in a knife fight. And I know that seems obvious, but I can't state that enough. If you have the option to run, just run. Get out of the situation. The situation itself is a horrible one to be in. Running doesn't have to mean actual running. You may have to back away slowly. You may have to run faster than you've ever run before. It's dependent on the situation. Trust your instincts and just get distance. Get as much range as possible. Give yourself an opportunity to see what your opponent is doing and stay out of range of one of these. What you do is going to be dependent on the situation. There's also going to be situations where you can't run. You may be pinned in a corner, and I don't mean cornered. If you're cornered, you can fight your way out of a corner. You might take damage, bad damage, but it's better than being pinned in a corner and not coming out of it. If you can get out, get out. Another reason you might not be able to run is protecting loved ones. I know a lot of people who put themselves in harm's way to protect their friends and family. And I respect those people, and I respect those decisions, as horrible as they are. But what gets you out of that situation with the best chance of surviving is a toolbox of skills. Matt Easton talked about this, and he is right on so many levels. Having that set of knowledge and those sets of skills help you get out of a situation alive, but not necessarily in the way that you think. I'll give an example of what's happened to me, but this is not a story time. I know I usually do that on this channel, but this isn't the time. I'll just say what's relevant, where it's relevant. That toolbox became extremely helpful, but not in a way that you might think. I had a bit of a born identity moment, and I don't mean some epic Steven Seagal knife fight. I mean that in about 2 to 3 seconds, I had so much go through my mind, giving me options and situational awareness as to how that person was holding the knife, what they could do, what type of range they could cover, what possible attacks they could have, what defensive objects I had, what exits I had. It would take me 10 minutes or more to explain all of that properly, but without that training toolbox, I think I may have froze. So I want to give you guys just a couple of items for your toolbox. Firstly is survivability with distance. If a person with a knife, be it one of these or one of these, can reach you with a lunge or a jump, you're too close. Get further back and get as much distance as possible. If you can't maintain distance, create a path. Find somewhere that you can run to and make that a clear way. Push your opponent hard. You may take damage, but taking damage once is better than sustained damage. Create the path and run. I cannot state this enough. Rule 1 of a knife fight is do not get in a knife fight. Increase distance where you can and position yourself to give yourself an escape. As I said, I want to help you guys by giving you some items for your toolbox. And I want to start with defensive objects. What you have on you, most of you, will be wallet, keys, possibly a phone. These items can help. They're not knife proof, they're not screwdriver proof, but they offer a form of resistance. Put them in the way put them between you and the knife if you can, and drop them as soon as you need to. If you need to hand over your wallet, do so and run in the other direction. If you find yourself at a point of advantage that you can get the knife and throw it out of the way, don't hold on to the other items. Dedicate 100% to getting that knife out of the situation if you're in dire straits. Now we get to the first of the harsh truths. You may have to sacrifice non-vital parts of yourself to survive. You won't always have time to grab phone, to grab wallet, and to grab keys. For those of you who are able-bodied and have use of their arms, I suggest using them if you need to. You will take damage, but you've got a much higher chance of surviving. The inside of the arm is meaty. Don't put that in the way. Don't go open hand towards your opponent. If they're attacking you, the back of your arms, they're bonier, there's less tendons, there's less muscles, there's less veins in those areas. They can sustain more damage than a lot of other parts of your body. It will hurt. But if you're in a knife fight, hurt is better than dead. If you find yourself that close range in a knife fight, you need to give it your all. And being that close range to a knife, you may find it that you have to grab the knife, or you have just out of reaction grabbed the knife. If that happens, don't let go. You now have in your hand, and are probably taking a little bit of damage, but you have the most dangerous part of the weapon. You have control of the most dangerous part of the weapon. Hold on to that and get rid of the item as soon as possible. Throw it far to the side. Wrench it out of a person's hand. Skallagrim did a video explaining that you can hold on to a sharp blade and not take damage, even if the person is pulling and yanking with all of their might, if you're holding on to it correctly. In a knife fight, you may not be holding on to it correctly, but that could give you a few seconds. If they rear back from actually drawing it out of your hand, use that to go in the other direction. Just go back to rule 1 always. Don't get in a knife fight. I'm very cautious with giving this advice because although this advice will work in most situations, it won't in all of them. And I don't want to see any of you get the wrong advice at the wrong time. One of the best toolboxes you can have is training. Training for awareness, asking questions, finding yourself in chaotic situations in a safe environment, having people sneak up on you in a safe environment so that you're trained to respond. It's not something that everybody can do, but just a little bit of training will help. Knowing that if you need to, the weak points of the body, the groin, the throat, the eyes, they give you seconds, but they can be vital seconds. There's obviously a lot that can be covered here. Talking about break points of grip by using the thumb or using the ring finger to break a grip, to winding defenses to keep things away from your center line, or talking about wrist locks or arm bars to restrict movement. But I don't want to go into a lesson on how to fight a knife. That's not what this is. As much as a toolbox is handy, I would advise you to seek out a local practitioner, a trusted local practitioner. And when you have things instructed to you, question them and test them from other ways. Don't just go with what the kata, for lack of a better term, will always show you. Test them, see if they work, and increase your toolbox. Rule 3 of a knife fight is don't get stabbed. And I know that seems obvious, but I'm going to refer again to Matt Easton's video on this one. It's what inspired this video, and it's a very important point. He mentioned that the more holes there are in someone, the less the chance of survival. And that's very true. From modern medicine to historical accounts. In this book, I remember reading about a historical account that noted in duels that slashes and cuts, people would keep fighting, but after a stab or two, the fight was over. If you need to put defensive objects or yourself, certain parts of yourself, in the way to avoid getting stabbed in core regions, absolutely do so. Rule 3 of a knife fight, and probably the most important one, is don't get stabbed. When talking about knife attacks, there are two things that are never talked about, but they are just as important. Number one, as I said before, I talked about this, but avoiding the situation, if at all possible, creates a 100% survival rate. And the other one nobody talks about is the after effects. Finding yourself in a situation like that and surviving it is great, but it can cause trauma and has caused trauma in the past. if you find yourself in that situation, open up to your friends, to your family, the trusted members of your friends and family that you can talk to this about. And if you still feel eaten up by this, know that even though your friends will want to help you, they're not psychologists, they're not psychiatrists. They don't know how to set out a recovery plan for something like this. If you need to seek professional help, there is no shame in that. Go talk to professionals and make sure that you can get through something so you come out better at the other end, regardless of the trauma that sent you in. Remember, stress and regression like that is like a grenade. Holding on to it is just going to hurt you and everybody around you. If you need to see help after a situation, a trauma, do so. So to recap, avoid the situations that pose a threat. Keep your mind about you, and wherever possible, give an attacker, a threatener, what they want. If it's money, if it's power of some type, they just want to rule it over you, just do it. It will allow you to walk away. If you find yourself in a situation where you can't easily escape, get as much distance between you and the attacker as possible. And that will help you having to avoid fighting for your life, because make no mistake, a knife fight is fighting for your life. And if you do have to fight, protect your vital organs. You will get cut, don't get stabbed. I'll link Matt Easton's video and Skallagrim's video down below. Although I don't agree with everything that Matt said there, 99.9% of it I know is 100% from my point of view very true. I advise you to watch it, maybe send him a thank you for posting this type of video. It's important for our community to know these sort of things and to help spread that information. I'll state it again. Rule 1 of a knife fight is do not get in a knife fight. Give yourself a toolbox of skills and train for these type of situations. Till next time, stay safe.